13th. Welcome in particular to the public at home and in the gallery. You're very welcome. Welcome as well to members of the press. I will briefly introduce our principal planning officers and then we'll go to a few housekeeping notes. So on my right, we have Mr. Ollie Bolter, who is our strategic manager for planning and infrastructure. Ms. Sarah Wilkinson sits to the far right at the end of the table. She is a planning and development manager. Mr. Russell Chick in between, also a planning and development manager. Mr. Neil Troughton, adjacent to me, is our highways representative. To my left is Mr. Ben Gard, our legal advisor. To his left is Jodie Gibson, also a legal advisor, and our committee clerk, Ms. Mary Bartlett, sits on the other corner. There are no planned fire drills during this meeting, so if you hear the fire alarm, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the signposted set of stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or the public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building, walk across the car park around the building to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts cannot be used in the event of an emergency. Please don't re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of staff. If I could just ask everyone to check that their mobile phones are either switched off or onto mute. And for all speakers, if you can use the microphones, it's just the right silver button when you're speaking. If I could also ask that no food is consumed save for where it is for a medical need. Colleagues will remember, of course, you cannot leave the council chamber during the debate or the presentation, and if you do so, you'll be unable to vote on that matter. And obviously to members of the public, thank you for your attendance. Obviously, you're here to observe and keep any disruption to an absolute dearth. Thank you. We'll run through then the lighting system. So when you're asked to speak, the green light as it is will illuminate. The amber light will flash for a few seconds when you're coming to the conclusion of your allocated time, and when the red light displays, I will stop you, which is to ensure all parties have a fair amount of time and the process is clear. So we go first now to apologies. We've had apologies from Councillor Quirk, who is being replaced by Councillor Ward. Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Councillor Mosdell. Councillor Spink is going to be represented in terms of the application by Councillor Jarman, who will be speaking as a ward member on that application. And we have Councillor Cameron, who is going to be substituting. Thank you for that, Councillor Cameron, for Councillor Spink. We have Councillor Toogood, who is our iWalk representative. So thank you very much, Councillor Toogood. We go then to our previous minutes from our last meeting. Are there any addendums, errata, or comments? If not, then I'd look for a proposer and a seconder. Proposer, Councillor Andre, Councillor Christensen seconded. All in favour of passing? Thank you. Any against? Carries. I will just sign those. Thank you. Public questions. So we have received one public question, which I will endeavour to find from Mr. Simon Cook. I don't know if anybody has an additional copy. Thank you very much, Mr. Gard. So the question, I don't know if Mr. Cook is in the public. Do you wish to ask it directly? Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Sorry, Councillor Cook.
Actually, no, I'm no longer a councillor, but thanks anyway. Right, my question is, are all councillors routinely informed of planning enforcement site visits in their wards or indeed elsewhere? And is it normal practice for a councillor to be invited to or attend such site visits?
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. I'm going to, as this is essentially a matter of procedure and policy surrounding the planning authority, I'm going to defer to my colleague who's going to give a brief enunciation of what that policy is. But if you have a follow-up, I'd be very happy to field that, and I can give you a more detailed response as well. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Chair. So in very short answer to your question, Mr. Cook, the answers are no and no.
Supplementary, Mr. Cook.
Yes, please. Thank you. That's as I thought. As you may recall, I was formerly a Rye Town councillor, and in my role as the chair of the planning committee, I met regularly with the Isle of Wight Council planning officer, who was paid for by RTC to provide enforcement in the town. I was told in person and have in writing that an Isle of Wight councillor in a position of significant authority attended an enforcement site visit in Ryde that they have a very public interest in, which I found to be highly inappropriate. There had been a reluctance by officers to tackle this case in the first instance, which was described to me by them as a, quote, political hot potato. In my view, the actions subsequently taken were woefully inadequate. In the interest of transparency, please could you provide me with a list of all instances where a councillor has attended a planning enforcement site visit over the last 2 years? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. We will, if it's okay, have a written response to that. I think we have your details, so we'll forward that on. But yeah, I'm just going to defer to Mr. Bolter as he may have a point to make regarding that. Mr. Bolter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the further question. Obviously, that I'm surprised to hear that. So I would welcome the opportunity for further discussion and to understand a bit more around what the concerns and specifically the site, etc. So perhaps we can reach out after this meeting to arrange something.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Are there any further public questions? I understand that a member of the public has asked, and thank you for the request, to distribute some additional material in relation to the first application on our agenda. I've declined simply for essentially the point that we wouldn't field information that we haven't had chance to review thoroughly. It's essentially concerning the matter of flooding. So you'll see in the presentation that is a point that has been ventilated, I think, well, and I imagine and I hope that colleagues will ask a lot of questions surrounding that. So I appreciate that is a very live point to the community, and we'll certainly be exploring it in detail. But as I say, for the reasons that I've just enunciated, that we wouldn't be able to circulate something that we aren't able to look at the entire provenance of. I'm sure it is absolutely accurate, but it's simply a matter of form and policy. So thank you for that and your understanding. Any questions from the gallery? We haven't received any others, so we ask, I move then to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Excellent, in which case we'll move swiftly on. So we go to our substantive and first agenda item, the reference being 23/01955/OUT. This is land adjacent to Wellow Fields, Main Road, Wellow. So I will defer to Mr. Chick with our presentation. Mr. Chick.
Thank you, Chairman. Bear with me while I just get the presentation working properly. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. Yes, so the planning application is an outline planning application for 10 houses in Wellow, at Wellow Fields. The application site is in the position, it's not showing the right one at the moment.
Apologies to anyone watching at home, but we've got a slight technical issue with the presentation, so hang tight with us whilst we resolve that. And hopefully won't be of long duration.
Right, apologies for that. These things are sent to test us. So yes, I'll start again. The planning application is for an outline application for 10 houses in the centre of Wellow at the point of the red dot at the moment. It's located adjacent to the Millennium Green, and councillors will remember Main Road on Friday as being the main focal point to the front of the site. Just to the east is Wellow Top Road, where Wellow Institute is located.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chick, if you could speak a little louder. Thank you very much.
And then alongside that, you can see the OS plan where the pointer is now just showing the location of the site where the red dot is moving at the moment. So the next slide is just showing an aerial photograph of the application site. You can see at the point of the cursor now, the application site is currently an agricultural field, surrounded on 3 sides by established hedgerows. And on the other side, there is a post and wire fence onto an access, a secondary access to Hartsall Cottage, which is located at the point of the cursor now. That access serves a field in this location. And then next to that, on the right-hand side, is the proposals map from the island plan, which shows that the site isn't subject of any designations. Designations near to the site include several listed buildings. So one at the point of the cursor here, which is Wellow House, and then another property just about 30 metres from the site called June Cottage, and then 2 listed buildings off to the east of the site, those being Sixpenny Cottage and the old post office. And then the little black mark in between them is a locally listed building, which is an old K6 phone box. The blue that you can see through the screen there is the route of the Thorley Brook, which starts to the east of Wellow Top Road and then flows off to the north. And then some photographs of the application site. So the location plan below is just showing you the location of the photographs and the direction that I took them within. So these photographs of this main field show the Millennium Green. So at that point, I'm stood about the point of the cursor here, just as you enter the Millennium Green, looking towards the application site. So the Millennium Green has a hedge in that location, and beyond it is the application site. Then the third photograph in the bottom right-hand corner is the other side of that hedge. So just located here on the secondary access to Hartsall Cottage, and that shows the post and wire fence and the eastern side of the application site. Then these photographs are taken from Main Road in Wellow. I won't stay on those for too long as councillors visited the site obviously on Friday, but what you can see is the access into Hartsall Cottage here. And then the appearance of Main Road in the other slides. Then stood in the access again to Hartsall Cottage, just looking towards existing properties. So you can see the backdrop of the built street scene there with several cottages behind the hedge, which is the hedge that aligns Main Road. And then these photographs are took from inside of the application, but on the western side, so close to the ditch and the footpath that we stood on Friday, looking into the site. So you can see here on the bottom slide and right hand side, looking towards those properties in Main Road again, just here. And then the other photographs are looking back to the east towards the listed buildings on Wellow Top Road. And you can just see in the top there, this is Hartsold Cottage, approximately 120 metres away from the site. Then just a quick review of how Wellow Main Road looks. So these photographs are looking at Fairfield Terrace, which is off to the east of the application site. The application site boundary is around here. Then looking at the properties that are in this location, and then Mattingley Farm, which is opposite to where the proposed access would be, which I'll show you on the slides in a moment. And then finally, just some photographs showing the properties that are closest to the application site. So this property is Teasle Cottage. It is right alongside the site, and there is a drainage ditch just here, which is concreted at this point, which then feeds under the road into a pipe. And so the photograph alongside is just showing you what Teasle Cottage looks like. Its main elevation faces the site, doesn't have any rear elevation windows, I presume to protect the privacy of Wellow House behind. And so it does look over the application site. That's its main aspect. And then this photograph is showing the nearest listed building, very attractive building, which is Wellow House. It's grade 2 listed, and it does have curtilage listed buildings around to the side as well, a small garage. So looking at the proposals then, as I said, this application is made in outline. The only detailed matter for consideration is means of access. And the access is shown obviously in this location here. So the application site is crossed by a high pressure sewer, what was called Sea Clean. You may recall, and I think it's about year 2000 was built, or 1990. But you can see the proposed 10 houses laid out in this manner at the moment, with 4 alongside the road, and then the remaining 6 alongside the Millennium Green and just around the corner here. But this is an indicative layout. It's not, it could be subject to change. The rear of the site is proposed to be open space, and the applicant has confirmed since the site visit that it would be public open space. Then moving swiftly on, I've just shown a sort of ghosting of the proposed layout, which, as I say, is indicative, showing how it could look alongside the existing development in this location. I appreciate it's slightly fuzzy, but hopefully it is helpful in some means. And 35% of those houses would be for affordable housing, which would be 4 properties. And then some examples of how the dwellings could look have been given in the applicant's design and access statement. Some of these properties are built on the Isle of Wight, others I'm not sure if they are or not, but it does show examples of the sort of rustic appearance that may be the proposal for this site, but they are only indications of how they could look, because final details would be at a reserved matters stage if the outline application was granted consent. And then moving on to access. So this is the detailed plan for the means of access, showing the access junction on the south side of Main Road. Mattingley Farm is opposite here, obviously not shown on the plan, but that's where it would be located. This plan shows about a 22-metre section of pavement, but councillors, you'll be aware from the committee report that Island Roads have requested a condition that a 1.5-metre section of pavement, hard pavement, should be provided between the bus stops that we saw on Friday and the eastern side of the proposed access. So that'd be about a 70-metre section of pavement that would lead all the way to these bus stops, and it would be 1.5 metres wide. One of the issues that was raised on the site visit fairly, was where the proposed pavement would abut to in the highway. So I went back after site visits and took a measuring staff and measured where the proposed pavement would extend into, and so how much it would reduce the width of the current carriageway. So these photographs, you can see point 1, taken just next to a telegraph pole. That telegraph pole forms the edge of the highway. So that is the edge of highway ownership. And the staff is laid out at 1.5 metres. I have extended it a bit just to account for the angle. So it is 1.5 metres flat from this point. And then photograph 2, slightly further up the road, so just past the access to Hartswell Cottage. So at that point, the bank is going into the Millennium Green. This is showing how far the pavement extends into here. And then the final photograph is taken much further along at this point, showing that the pavement would be in this location. So at that point, it wouldn't really affect the highway alignment. The application is recommended for conditional permission. It would be subject to a legal agreement to secure the affordable housing, the management of the open space, nitrates mitigation, and a £15,000 contribution towards rights of way improvements in the locality. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chick. We now move on to the public speaking element of this agenda item. So if I could ask Mrs. Joanna Minchin. Ms. Minchin, you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
I live in Wellow and present what locals feel. You are a council focusing on sustainability and social housing, but this plan has neither. However, I start with road safety. The planning officer underestimates the detriment to road safety. The road is too narrow to accommodate the virtual footpath. When you visited, residents were standing on the land of the proposed footpath. You saw the chaos with the bus. Last week, a parked ambulance stopped the bus getting through. The planning officer would not give you the road width nor the pavement measurement. Why not? On a site visit. Wellow gets busy in summer. Drivers ignore the speed limit. Island roads say Wellow is a width-restricted road unsuitable for diversions. They do not advise it, yet drivers ignore their diversion signs. And when the Newport Road is closed several weeks last year, Wellow becomes a rat run. An already intimidating walk becomes frightening with near misses. Wellow is on the Round the Island cycleway. Hundreds of cyclists pass every week. They'll use the pavement, the painted pavement, interpreting it as a cycle route. Confusing and unspecified as the engineer's plan for access to the bus stop, the planning officer has not said how this will work. A pavement over Hartswell land and Wellow Millennium Greenland is unlawful and unacceptable. Please turn down this application unless you are legally and morally clear you can pass it. The green was created after a child was knocked down on the road. A young adult has sustained life-changing brain injury after being hit walking to the bus stop. We need your help to keep Wellow safe. The green is a tranquil place to play that is not overlooked. Kids bring telescopes to see dark skies. Scouts visit to learn biodiversity. We need your help to encourage these outdoor activities over screen time. This out-of-character housing estate will destroy this. The development will overwhelm. It won't preserve or enhance. We know the government pressurises you, but this hamlet needs your protection. So outside the settlement boundaries, no services, no facilities. You know this is unsustainable. You can't nip out to buy a loaf of bread. The bus doesn't even go near Showfleet Primary School, and the landowner knows this because he used to drive his own child to the school. The adverse impacts of this plan far outweigh any benefits. Where is the social housing you prioritise? Please consider road safety and environmental hazard. Be awesome. Preserve what has been gifted for future generations by examining your consciences and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd certainly appreciate the sentiment from the gallery. I know that that was an eloquent speech, but if you could refrain from clapping, simply because for certain members it may be intimidating, and I have to do my best to make this as objective and fair as possible. I'm sure you understand, but thank you. We move then to Mr. Nigel Davey. Mr. Davey, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Flood risk, most of all, makes this.
Sorry, Mr. Davey, could I ask you to use the microphone and please feel free, we will restart the timer. Thank you.
Right. Okay, sorry. Flood risk, most of all, makes this project unsustainable. I passed some pictures to Mr. Bolter, which I came across last night, which are probably the best indication of all, which I'd love if you could see. But there's been plenty of instances where we've had massive problems here. It's timely and ironic that the developer recently experienced flooding on his own property. washing out his business and destroying equipment, animal bedding and feed. His premises are at most 200 metres from the site, very similar elevation too. He appealed on Facebook for community help, yet there doesn't seem to be much regard to the risk of flooding to Wellow's community in this application. The Water Authority estimates that 150 litres of water is used per person per day. With an average household of 2.4 people, 10 homes would force 3,600 additional litres of water into the ditch adjoining the site daily. The suggested costly and high maintenance attenuation tank might prove suitable in dry periods, but will not be suitable in prolonged periods of heavy rain, or should it fail. This 3,600 litres of water has got to go somewhere. The ditch alongside the site drains a large acreage of fields above Wellow. It can be dry in summer and a trickle at other times, but in heavy rain, the path along it and the path alongside it overflow with growing regularity. The proposal deprives Wellow also of a large natural drainage area once it's concreted over. The Council's lead flood report of 5th of August 2024 recognised significant failures in drainage locally. The 12-inch culvert going under the road and property opposite lacks sufficient capacity to handle this heavy rain. How can an outline proposal not even mention this? The landowner opposite the site is also unwilling to allow excavation for this project. In 2023, flooding across Main Road, Rose and Teasel cottages, directly attributable to this ditch and culvert, led to an insurance claim of £50,000. Is the planning authority happy to accept responsibility for this additional risk? The application does nothing to recognise or address this flooding that will only be amplified by this proposal. Regular flooding also occurs upstream on Thorley Brook, a well-known flood area. I think that was shown on your plan earlier. Along with the 20 other village new builds recently approved, this brook cannot sustain the additional pressure from another 10. Unpredictable weather patterns brought on by climate change flood the site with increasing regularity. The report now says apparently 1 in 1,000 chance of it flooding. This estimate is not based on local knowledge or current climate conditions. Where is any kind of risk assessment? Finally, the statutory requirement to consult Natural England regarding wastewater and nitrates entering Thorley Brook and the Yar, environmentally sensitive solent, have not been undertaken. To be sustainable, surely this key task must be done before even outline permission is given. Whilst the planning report acknowledges presumption in favour of sustainable development, it recognises the permission should not ultimately be granted. With so little detail, 115 local objections and over 240 separate points concerning various issues. How on earth? Wow.
I will let you finish your sentence.
Okay, I was only going to say, with that lack of local amenity, with no demonstrated local need, how can we say this is sustainable?
Thank you. I'll have to draw you to conclude, but thank you very much. Mr. Daly, thank you. We move then to Councillor Jonathan Hill on behalf of Shalfleet Parish Council. Mr. Hill, you have 6 minutes. Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of, is that working? Yeah, I'm
Yes, thank you
speaking
very
on
much.
behalf of Shalfleet Parish Council. Before we turn to matters of planning, I wish to place several comments on record. This application was re-advertised in April 25, yet to notice today's meeting was only issued on December the 22nd, and it reached registered objectors the day before Christmas Eve. It is hard to understand why such a significant notification was released at a time almost guaranteed to limit its public awareness. Equally concerning is that Shalfleet Parish Council has still not received its statutory written notification. The planning officer's report gives an air of predetermination, yet nearly 120 well-reasoned objections have not been analysed or addressed, but have simply been confined to 10 disconnected pages. This is not balanced or fair. The application itself is a rerun of the 23 application, just with fewer houses. None of the concerns raised then by the Parish Council or the statutory consultees have been addressed in any meaningful way. And whilst I admit this is an outline application, outline permission sets the trajectory for everything that follows. The information we've been given is generic and not specific, and it fails to engage on any real issue. Wellow is a historic linear village. Its narrow roads are used daily for a myriad of people. There are no pavements. This is not an environment that can safely absorb additional traffic or a suburban type estate. Traffic pressures are already significant. The Wellow Road carries buses, farm vehicles, and heavy summer traffic. When the Newport Road closed, Wellow is the alternative route. Enormous tractors transport to the anaerobic digesters at great pace all through the season. The virtual fantasy payment is not a safety measure, it's a risk multiplier. The road is simply too narrow. The design and scale of this development is totally inappropriate. It's an estate, suburban in form, urban in feel, entirely out of keeping with Wellow. The site is beside the Millennium Green, a cherished community space, our village green, created and nurtured by Wellow residents for over 30 years. Any development here would diminish it. Flooding is not hypothetical, it happens now. The site waterlogs, adjacent fields and main road floods during heavy rain. Waters run off the applicant's land. We heard from Nigel about his own recent cri de coeur of his own flooding problems. In October 23, nearby flooding caused damage to residents' houses, and the Isle of Wight Council will have this logged somewhere, even if it's only in the accounts department, because the council itself paid its compensation. If this development worsens flooding, will the Isle of Wight Council indemnify homeowners and their insurers? Climate change means flooding is far more frequent than these once every 100 years models suggest. Attenuation tanks do not reduce water volume, they slow flow. Runoff will still hit Fort Thorley Brook, which is tidal and reverses flow, causing worse flooding. Infrastructure is a major problem. Wellow has simply no amenities. The bus service is hourly and doesn't serve Shelfleet School. Residents will be entirely car dependent. Across Shelfleet Parish, we have development pressures already. 16 unbuilt houses at Lee Farm, 2 in Wellow being built, 70 at Burt's Close, and community-led housing project in Newbridge is in pre-planning stages. A recent Shelfleet Parish Council needs survey reiterated a clear need for genuinely affordable housing for local people with a high rental percentage, no mention of unrealistic priced executive homes. Adding 10 more houses is just simply wrong and compounds existing pressures. Road safety remains a fundamental issue. Pedestrians, cyclists, buses, tractors, everybody uses this road. Your own site visit demonstrated this. People on a narrow virtual pavement, real cyclists, real dog walkers, the odd parked car, and then crisis, the number 7 bus arrived. The road was closed, and this was on a freezing day in January. No tourists, no ride-outs, no digesters. So I appeal to you. This application does not respect the character of Wellow, nor does it address the idea already high flooding risk. Neither does it provide safe access, and it certainly doesn't meet the infrastructure or housing needs of our community. The statutory requirement to cut natural England has not been undertaken. It simply repeats the flaws of 2023 and yet again fails to respond to the concern of many of the major stakeholders, including the Shelfleet Parish Council. I urge you to refuse this application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hill. We move then to Mr. David Long on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Long is the agent. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'm not going to go through the kind of planning considerations as written by the report. The only thing that I will just touch upon is the discussion about flood risk. So you'll all probably be aware that the council have got a supplementary planning document, and that's actually underpinned by building regulations and then the hierarchy adopted by Southern Water for drainage connections, essentially. So for the purposes of surface water, what a development has to do, any development, including this development, they have to calculate the surface flows from the development, and they also have to calculate the greenfield rate runoff from the existing land and combine that, plus they have to mitigate with an extra freeboard of 45% additional capacity. And that takes into account existing greenfield rate runoff and also climate change scenario. And therefore, in other Regulation 19 flood risk reports, including the likes of Bembridge, actually development is shown to improve flow rates from existing land. I'll park that there for now. Secondly, I had a call from someone I knew from Wellow, not the applicant, describing the events on Friday from the site visit, and not dismissing the right of public opinion and placards and objection, which is fair cop. People are allowed to object. But what I started to think about for members was, gosh, you've got a hard job to do in making decisions in planning committee. You have to weigh up objectors' comments. You have to look at the application objectively against your policies. You also have your own personal opinions, and you also have your political opinions. How do you clash all that? You know, let's be honest, some members are more pro-development than some other members are, say, more negative to development. You widen that to the council as a cabinet, those two poles can be even more widened compared to a planning committee. But I say this in the round of Wellow, and the multitude of evidence base going towards the island plan strategy, which the council as a whole has voted for to progress. And embedded within that evidence base and embedded as a critical part of the IPS, what does it say about the settlement hierarchy? You go down in the settlement hierarchy and it talks about Wellow, and that's lumped with places like Seaview and Nettleston and some others. And what is that? It's a sustainable rural settlement, which is pro-growth. And therefore, a vote negative to this application is actually a direct strike against a plan that you've already voted for to be sustainable and to advance with the planning inspectorate. And you ask yourselves, where on earth, if we don't have a site that's probably and arguably, justifiably in the centre of Wellow, which is a sustainable rural settlement, where on earth does then development go in IPS terms? Do we then knock on further? We've still got the issues of the perception of danger of roads and flood risk. Those things don't go away field by field. You've always got that problem. But these problems can be sorted. But where does a sustainable rural settlement grow when you've got a site right in the middle of the heart of the village? Arguably, I would say this is the most best site for Wellow to grow. I also appreciate that the objectors say the site isn't sustainable, you don't need more growth. But I'm also conscious that the objectors' houses are a construct, they're not a construct of God's own creation, they're a construct of building on some land over a period of time. This is just Wellow's next succession of change. It is a change. We must also remember that change doesn't have to be a negative one. The application does show an illustrative plan, but it is not fixed on its detail. Those details can be arrived at successfully well. I do appreciate that there are some developments on the island that give a bad name to development, and some are relatively new. But we also know that some developments have been brilliantly executed, and I would urge that this can be a brilliant execution. So members, I'd take stock from the strategic IPS. We have voted on a plan that is advancing, noting that in section 7.117, where a plan advanced the planning inspectorate with a lower housing number, and the planning inspectorate, whether we like it or not, said you need more housing. So to then underpin and question Wellow as a rural sustainable settlement to nullify its benefit to grow is, to me, wrong. Members, this can be a successful site. It is well proven, and I'd urge you to approve consent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long. If I have to speak again in relation to comment from the public gallery, I will have no option but to clear it, which I'm very loath and reluctant to do. But I'm sure you can understand, and particularly during the debates amongst councillors, any interruption, even if it's slight, can jeopardise the proceedings. So I have to be very strict on that. I'm sure you do understand. So that will be my last word on the matter. Thank you very much, Mr. Long. We move now to Councillor Jarman, who's speaking on behalf of Councillor Spink, the local ward member. Councillor Jarman, you have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Wellow has no dentist, no doctor's surgery, no shops, no supermarket, no post office, no ATM, no direct bus route, and no safe walk to the nearest primary school, and no mains foul sewer. You've heard evidence of parts of the application site and the nearby Wellow Road and the houses are already prone to surface water flooding. These are not normally the characteristics associated with sustainable development. Although this is an outline application, the principle of development is for determination today, and the criteria you apply is the same as for a full application. I therefore ask you to consider the following important questions. Are you satisfied that the development will not harm the designated sites of the Solent, including the Ramsar to the south of Yarmouth? It is clear that without mitigation, harm is possible. Unusually, there is no statement from Natural England confirming that the proposed mitigation will be sufficient. There is, however, a statement from Natural England requiring further details which has not been addressed. There is scant information of the proposed mitigation on the planning portal, other than a bland statement that land adjoining the site will be used. The nitrate credits will be purchased. From what source will these credits be purchased? And will those credits benefit the site that the proposed development drains into? How, as Natural England has requested, will the mitigation be monitored, funded, and secured for the lifetime of the development? And why have their questions not been addressed? Protecting designated sites is of paramount importance. It would be unwise and contrary to planning policy if Planning Committee were to approve this application, knowing that the material required by Natural England has not been supplied. Question 2. Are you satisfied that development will not increase the risk of surface water flooding? Once again, there is very little information on the website to assist the committee with this question. It is proposed that the semi-treated foul and grey water, together with surface water from the application site, will drain into the ditch along the western boundary. A report by the lead local flood authority in June 24 stated that the information provided is insufficient to demonstrate that flood risk and surface water drainage will be managed effectively. The same body also stated that the standard of detail required by the Council's SPD has not been met. Surface water mapping shows parts of the site and the area immediately to the north is prone to flooding. Local knowledge confirms this to be the case, as it was the day prior to the site visit. The ditch that foul water will drain into and the narrow pipe under the road causes the water to back up and flood. It is not proposed to enlarge this pipe, and in any event, the ownership is unknown. In my submission, it would be wholly wrong to grant permission based on such inadequate information. Question 3. Are you satisfied the development will not be car dependent? It's clear that the occupants of the 10 houses will have to travel to access shops, doctors and schools, etc. In order to use the bus, it will be necessary to use the proposed virtual footway only 1.5 metres wide, with precious little room between pedestrians using the footway and passing buses and vehicles. Will residents be confident to use, or let their children use, or those with accessible needs use, a footway sited within the carriageway of a very narrow road? In reality, the occupants of the site will jump into their cars. It's the only safe way to move. The same is true of the trip to the nearest primary school in Shalfleet. There is no safe way of walking to the school, as most of the walk would be in the carriageway, and a bus trip would involve going to Yarmouth, changing and coming back to Shalfleet, a journey of about an hour. Question 4. Will the footpath have a negative effect on traffic flow and road safety? In my submission, it clearly will have this effect. A prime example you've heard of at the site visit, where a bus coming along could barely get through with a car parked on one side of the road and residents standing where that virtual footpath is proposed. Question 5, does the area actually need this development? The NPPF requires development in rural areas to demonstrate an identified local need for development. The Court of Appeal has stated that local need still applies even when a tilted balance has been implemented. There is extant permission for 70 houses in adjacent Sharfleet and 17 even closer in Thorley. Will the four so-called affordable houses in this proposed development be affordable by local people, and will any of them be for social rent? It is often the case that officers advise the committee that refusing an application against their recommendation is likely to result in an appeal by the applicant to the inspector. It is, however, a fundamental principle of planning policy that development can only be supported if it is sustainable. It is difficult to imagine that any inspector would find that this application would deliver a sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jarman, on behalf of Councillor Spink, the local ward member. That concludes our public speaking elements of the agenda item. You're very welcome to go to the gallery if you'd like, or certainly feel free to stay if you prefer. I generally try to keep a demarcation as between questions and debate. That's usually of limited success, but I think it is helpful for people watching at home. So to the extent that we can do that, that would be appreciated. I've just been advised by officers that there are a couple of points which arise from the public speaking, so I will defer to Mr. Chick. Mr. Chick.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just a couple of points to pick up on. The first one, I think in the public speaking, people said Natchering hadn't been consulted. They were consulted twice on the planning application. They provided their standard advice, which is that the planning authority should satisfy itself on issues related to the SPEA and international sites. What they didn't say was there's no information. It basically said you should be satisfied yourself that the information is there and that the planning authority should undertake an appropriate assessment. The parish council consultation, parish councils are consulted through the press list on a weekly basis. We do not write direct to them. The standard practice is simply that a press list is sent to the parish council. They can then look through the press list and decide whether they can comment or not. And the parish council did comment on this planning application, as you'll see through the officer report. The final point I pick up on, a member of the public said that access across of the proposed pavement crossing the access to Hartsall Cottage would be unlawful. The proposed pavement would take place within highway land. It would not cross land owned by Hartsall Cottage. It would cross the access to Hartsall Cottage, but obviously via the conditions, if this was approved, the planning authority would ensure that there was not a raised curb across that access, because obviously from our point of view, we wouldn't want to hinder it. So any pavement agreed via conditions would need to have the normal drops so that its level was down below the level of the highway so that people can come in and out of that access. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chick. Colleagues, any questions arising from the presentation? Councillor Andre, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have several things that mostly for clarity. I've also picked up on a couple of things that were said, which I would like to put to Mr. Chick for just some more clarity. So one of the things that was referred to was the habitat regulations assessment. That is actually covered under 6.9. Now, as we've heard, I appreciate this is an outline permission, but just to reassure that we would be looking to have an HRA carried out. That's my first question, as if things were to progress.
Mr. Chick.
Yes, so planning authority officers have undertaken the HRA, as we do for applications that can affect international sites directly or indirectly. This site could affect it indirectly or directly, given the links to Thorley Brook. We've undertaken an appropriate assessment and satisfied ourselves that it wouldn't result in harm to the SBA because of mitigation measures that could be included in the drainage strategy, but also because the application would pay the normal mitigation for recreational disturbance as well. So that's been undertaken. Natchering have confirmed that sites that use standard mitigation for drainage that's set out in the SBD relating to nitrates do not have to consult them on the appropriate assessments. They have provided overarching advice on situations where standard mitigation for nitrates impacts is secured, either by conditions or a legal agreement, as in this case, that Natchingen don't need to be consulted on appropriate assessments.
Thank you, Mr. Chick. Supplementary, Councillor Andre.
If I may, understandably, there's a lot of concern over flooding, which I fully appreciate. But it would seem to me that there are some very relevant points within this report that address this, and I'd just like to highlight. So we've already heard mention of the SPD regarding the sustainable underground drainage systems, but we also have policy DM14, which addresses which it would have to comply with in respect of flooding. Now, just picking up on the same topic, Chair, Southern Water, it says at point 6.7 that they provided standard advice relating to the proximity of soakaways to sewers and mains water supplies and the use of a packaged treatment plant. And then they go on to advise that the Environment Agency should be consulted in relation to the proposed packaged treatment plant. The following point, 6.8, confirms that the Environment Agency said they had no comments to make. Now, the comments from Shalfleet Parish Council, one of them actually quotes in direct contradiction to that the Environment Agency recommend the application is refused, but they are referring to the initial comment, is that right, on the 16th of January 2024, just to be clear, by the Environment Agency. And through further, presumably, discussions, there were further mitigations that were put forward that resulted in the comment from the Environment Agency on the 28th of March last year, 2025, being that presumably they were satisfied at that point. Just to clarify, because it looks obviously that there was some contradiction there.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that. I know you were nodding, Mr. Chick, but.
So, I mean, their initial comment was in relation to a much bigger development as well. So the development has since changed. It's down to 10 dwellings. We have the drainage strategy submitted. The agency have chosen not to object. I mean, in terms of flood risk, the site itself is in flood zone 1, so it's at the lowest risk of flooding. So it's in the 1 in 1,000 chance of flooding. Where the flooding happens is in the road, not on the site. That's caused by the drainage ditch alongside it. Now, the planning application addresses the issue of it solving its own drainage issues. So, as one of the members of the public said, the ditch alongside the site captures a much greater level of flood water than the application itself. But the planning application needn't solve all of the drainage problems, all of that huge area of farmland which is above it. Planning guidance is that the application must solve the drainage issues and the flooding issues for itself, not the wider area. So, and that is what the guidance says. So the planning application is seeking to ensure that flood risk from this site as a result of surface water isn't increased as a result of the development. Now, the flood risk and drainage strategy sets out that certain measures could be put in place. It is a high level FRA and drainage strategy. One of the comments said that an outline application must be treated the same as a full application. That's not true. This is an outline application. It means that the layout of the development is not fixed. Therefore, the drainage for this site can be treated by condition or be a reserved matter in itself. Now, what that strategy gives us is a high level appraisal of how drainage on this site could happen. It acknowledges that permeability on this site isn't very good. There are solutions that can deal with that. And what the LLFA are saying is those solutions could involve rainwater harvesting, attenuation tanks, those kind of things. So what we'd expect is for that information to be submitted as part of the reserved matter application. that would have to demonstrate a 45% reduction in runoff rates. So that would therefore reduce by 45% the water coming off that site into that ditch. And that's how the site itself solves its own drainage issues. It is not required to solve all of the drainage issues that may already affect Wellow.
Chair, if you're indulged, I'm
Yes.
happy to give way.
Yeah,
if
no, I
somebody
know.
else.
Well, as you're on this track, then Councillor
Thank you.
Cameron.
I mean,
So, Councillor Andre.
It is all related. In further terms of mitigation, I'm sure that people are aware that of the Pathfinder project, and there is actually there's optimization, which Southern Water describe as the installation of solutions that will maximize the existing installed infrastructure. And they've got optimization happening at Thorley Road, which could potentially have an impact. They've also got a slow the flow project in freshwater and Yarmouth and surface water connections. Do we think that the actions that Southern Water are taking through the Pathfinder project will have any effect on this specific site?
Thank you, Councillor Andre. I dare say it's outside of the scope of the application, but I think something perhaps Mr. Chick would be able to speak to. Mr. Chick.
To be completely honest, I don't know. So the proposals through that project are really managed by James Brewer, the policy manager, alongside Sam Aid, who's our drainage officer, our flood risk officer. So yes, there are proposals in place, as I understand it, across the Isle of Wight, working with agencies such as the farmers who own the land, Island Roads, Southern Water, to try and reduce flood risk problems, and that's the right approach. But that's a wider project outside of the planning application.
Thank you, Mr. Chick.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. Councillor Cameron.
Hi, Chairman. Can officers confirm whether the flood risk drainage works assesses only the application site? What evidence do we have that the receiving ditch, culvert and downstream network can accept the controlled discharge during peak events, including high groundwater conditions, given objections citing existing flooding on the road and houses?
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Mr. Chick.
Thank you. Yes, so the officer report explains that there are high groundwater level problems with the site during rainfall events. I think it's remind myself what it is. So yeah, groundwater for the proposed event would be within 0.025 meters of the ground surface, so it's going to be pretty wet. But what the site has to do is, as I've said, solve its own issues. And the requirement of the Environment Agency is that climate change should be factored in when you're looking at runoff rates from the site. So pre-development, this site has absolutely no drainage infrastructure, no drainage attenuation whatsoever. So when it rains, the water on this site some of it may be soaked into the ground, probably not very much given the geology of the area. Most of it will therefore run out into that ditch, straight into the Thorley Brook. That's an existing situation. But to take into account Environment Agency guidance, that runoff rate has to be reduced by 45%, and that's what would be agreed via conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Chick. Supplementary, Councillor Cameron.
The LLFA's consultants say more information is required on runoff limits, tank sizing, maintenance, infiltration controls and protecting the rising main. Then why are we approving outline without proof that the receiving system can cope?
Thank you, Mr. Chick.
Yes, so the LLFA obviously is managed by James Brewer in the policy department, and I spoke to him about the comments, and our view is that the information that's outlined within the LLFA comment can be secured by condition. The site layout isn't fixed, it is an outline. The site is also quite large, so there will be a significant proportion of the site that won't be developed, and therefore that area, which will be left as open space, can incorporate natural features to slow down runoff rates, so swales, those kind of things, which can be in that area to reduce the runoff rate naturally. Then the waters collected from the areas with hard surfaces can be reduced by rainwater harvesting, as the LLFA comment says. The surfaces throughout the site can be made permeable so that a percentage can be soaked into the land. But the final solution at the bottom of that kind of hierarchy is to tank the water. So collect it in a tank. That tank then reduces the runoff rate. It collects the water. The flows are reduced by the tank, so it has a valve fitted to it. That therefore only releases the water at a very much lower rate, so you do meet that 45% reduction. So our view is all those issues can be conditioned because of this site being an outline, so the layout's not fixed, and because there is space within the site to secure the attenuation.
Thank you very much. I anticipate you've probably got a fair few questions, Councillor Cameron, so I will see if anybody else, but I will come back to you. Other colleagues, any questions at all? Councillor Lilly.
Yes, I've got one or two. I think particularly the roads, which I was quite interested in on the site visit. I was a bit concerned that the Island Roads representative who's here tonight said that there will be no need for traffic regulation orders. If you look at the site where the pavements will be, there was no sort of double yellow lines opposite it, so people were just parking. And if they are parking on that, and also if you've got no double yellow lines on the pavement side proposed, you would actually could have parking on that side. Well, it was very, very clear that the bus, and we had the benefit of Vectus, Southern Vectus giving us a demonstration, couldn't get past, and I was really concerned because their wing mirrors are very, very large. And if you were walking down that pavement, even if the bus could get by, those wing mirrors would hit you, right? Of that, it to me wasn't safe. So I couldn't understand. And also one of the things is the middle white line would totally go because you go. So it will be a very narrow one traffic line. And there is, for me, that would be automatic to have traffic regulation order on this so that you had double yellow lines to do that, because you couldn't have any parking to have that flow of traffic. And I do empathise with, I think, what a lot of the residents have raised on that. We saw that for ourselves. I don't think we could ignore that. So my first question is, why wouldn't this be eligible for a traffic regulation order?
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. Mr. Chick.
Simply because it's not required. As Island Roads explained on site, if the highway authority wants to move white lines, or through the planning process, white lines are removed with the agreement of Island Roads, a TRO is not required.
Supplementary, Councillor Lilly.
Well, I will come back to that when I'm speaking overall. But my second question is about out of character. I think it's quite useful, Sharfleet Parish Council comments. Most of the houses were one story in that area, were basically bungalows. But you're actually going to put 2 stories, build it, well, you've got some, but opposite it. It seemed to me totally out of character for that, because those houses would overlook the privacy, especially the house by the side of the entrance, if you actually had the view of that. So I want to know your comments of why you would agree, because it's an outline planning permission. Why are we actually agreeing to two-story housing?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Are you able to speak to that, Mr. Chick, and perhaps open it wider as well to that the balance and the weight in relation to the design elements of this? I know it is obviously outline application, but that might be helpful. Thank you.
I mean, really, the photographs show that most of the houses in the application are two-storey. In terms of actual design, the officer report explains our thoughts in terms of the character of the area. The application is an outline, so we don't have any plans of houses to comment on. We've got illustrative examples. The plans show that some of them may be two-storey, some may be single-storey, but we don't have any plans to comment on because it is a pure outline application apart from the proposed access, which is a perfectly lawful approach in planning terms. Officers' views in terms of why that would be acceptable or not set out in the report. There's not much more I can really add.
Thank you, Mr. Chick. Perhaps one for the debate, as you alluded to, Councillor Lilly.
Can I just ask a supplementary?
I will, as Councillor Andre got an extra bite of the cherry, so that would seem fair.
A supplementary. Could there be a condition that the application came back to a full planning permission? Because normally with outline, it doesn't actually come back, but could we put a condition that it would come back to the full council? Sorry, the full, the planning committee.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Mr. Chick.
Yep. So any planning application would go through the processes in the constitution. So if there was a call in by the local member, then that could be considered by the chairman of the planning committee. So the correct process is not that every reserved matters application has to come back to committee. Obviously, we note committee's wishes when the application came in, but ultimately the process for a planning application to go to committee is set out in the constitution, and that would be the process that would be followed.
Thank you, Mr. Shai. This is an issue that we've come across before, and certainly we've said essentially that it's of persuasive effects, obviously, and one would hope that the strategic manager, whoever that would be, would speak to the chairman, whoever that would be, and a decision would be made partially based on that. There's no absolute black letter requirement that we can put surrounding it. So it is something that I think is a lacuna in national policy. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to affordable housing, but perhaps more along the lines of social rental and reduced or affordable rental properties. I know that this is obviously, in real terms, this is quite a small development. But do we have any options for expanding on that on this development? It's clearly something that's come up in the from members of the public and the other public speakers. I just wonder if there's something that we can do to allow for something within this relatively small development.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Mr. Chick.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Yes, so the proposal is for 35% affordable housing on site. Definition of affordable housing, as you know, is 20% discount. So that would the development meets the policy requirements both in the island plan and the MPPF for providing affordable housing on site. I mean, obviously the committee can direct what that affordable housing may be. It may be that committee says it should be a greater level of affordable rent compared to what's set out in the policy in the island plan. But ultimately, yes, the proposal is for on-site affordable housing, so for affordable houses in compliance with policy.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Yeah, thanks. So I probably didn't make it quite clear enough. So do we have any wiggle to increase that percentage through the approval, if we went to approval, of course, but by condition? But do we have an option to nail any of that into social rental? Is what I'm getting at, I guess.
Yeah, understood. Thank you, Councillor Price. Mr. Chick.
Well, the answer really is no, because the applicant has proposed the appropriate level of affordable housing, and obviously they accept the need for affordable housing on this site, and that it would either be affordable rent, which is I think 70% in the island plan, and then other products would be the 30%, the remainder. But yes, it would need to be something that fell into the definition of affordable housing, which would be discount market rent and discount market sale.
Thank you, Mr. Chick. Presumably, though, we are entitled within the general planning balance to weigh that, the pros and the cons, the benefits and such. So it speaks to that. Councillor Christensen.
Chair. I'm interested, I know there was quite some confusion over the pavement, the footway that would be proposed there. But I can see that in a lot of the comments that the residents nearby there's some confusion over. So it's now proposed it is a solid footway from the entrance to the bus stop area. There is no ghost footway, no presumed footpath there. Am I correct?
Mr. Chick.
Yes, so that's exactly right. So the latest set of plans show this ghost footpath. Iron Roads have come back and said that's not safe. It needs to be a pavement, which can be 1.5 metres wide.
And so that footway will go over the entrance to the other household that has entrance onto the road. And that will go over the end of that as well, but with a dropped curb.
Yes, so the entrance, and I'll just try and bring back the photograph which shows it. So there is an entrance next to the site, which is actually where this blue arrow is, which is a secondary access to Hartsole Cottage, which is located, sorry, I haven't got a cursor showing, but I'll put it on. There we go. So in this location here is the access that you can see in the photograph on the bottom left-hand side. Hartsole Cottage is at the point of the cursor now, so just to the south of Wellow Institute. The main residential access to that property is on the corner of Wellow Top Road. So that is the access for their cars to go in and out of their house into their garage. The access here serves a field. But yes, the proposed pavement would go effectively across this access, but obviously there wouldn't be a pavement here going across it because that would hinder people getting in and out. So we'd expect through the conditions when that pavement was agreed for that pavement to drop and allow the access to continue.
So there wouldn't be any legal requirement to gain land to have it across a third party area, as it were. Okay. So having that footway there and the removal of the centre line, I'm then surprised through Iron Roads that there's no other traffic management that is suggested for that area, be that a road narrow signs to make it very clear that only one width can get through from either end, because it is a very small road, and there is no reduction in the speed limit being proposed. And I think both of those things would be necessary to put that in and make that safe, in my point of view. But I know I'm not a roads expert, but there's going to be a change of road layout, and I think those sorts of things should go alongside it.
Thank you, Councillor. I will read into that if I may as well, because I think obviously highway safety is something that's been ventilated. Obviously, the authority have conceded essentially with regards to a ghost pavement that would not be sufficient. Have they provided any comments in terms of weighting and threshold with regards to any other traffic calming measures or speed restrictions or such? I don't know if that's something Mr. Troughton would be happy to speak to. Mr. Troughton, thank you.
The reduction in the actual carriageway width will actually be a speed reducing feature in itself. We've tracked a bus in one direction 2.5 metres wide with the IC design car in the other direction at 2 metres wide. There is still enough space for a car and a bus to pass. I would accept that two buses could not pass and they would have to informally give way to each other, but then they would be professional drivers. They know where they can or cannot pass. So 4.8 metres is actually the minimum recommended width in Manufacture Street to allow a commercial vehicle and a car to pass, and it will be retained above 4.8 metres for the entire length.
Thank you. In terms of the height of the proposed pavement, it's no different to a standard height of any rural road. There's nothing else unique or different about it.
Generally, the curb height will be 125 millimetres above the carriageway, and the road and the footway will be designed such as it drains from the back of the footway to the front, so the water goes actually onto the carriageway. At the existing access, it will be a drop curb between the 25 and 40 mil curb height drop down to, which allows mechanically prepared vehicles to continue to use the historic access.
Thank you very much. Supplementary, yeah, Councillor Christensen.
Right, thank you, Chair. I mean, I welcome the footway there. I think, having pavements in these villages is really important, but without extra measures to, you say professional drivers, there will be drivers of other larger vehicles, whether it is a camper van or something else. I mean, I know there'll be tractors and they should supposedly be professional drivers, but I think it's not very clear that that's going to be a very, very narrow area, and that I don't feel this is safe alongside that. And I think there should be more traffic management added to this to make it applicable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christensen. Any additional questions from colleagues? Councillor Cameron.
Sorry. Can I go back to the Natural England status? Can I just clarify? Given that Natural England's recorded position in the papers was that key information is still needed to access designated site impacts, as the Thorley Brook feeds into the internationally protected Ramsar site, Natural England said that they could object without this information. Has this information now been provided, and have we reconsulted with Natural England with that information?
Thank you. Mr. Chick.
I might need to just come back to that. I'll just check it and I'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciated. If there's a supplementary in the interim, Councillor Cameron, then please ask.
So, can someone state for the record which nitrate credit site is being used, who will operate it, how many units are being purchased, and where exactly is that secured in the 106 so it cannot be swapped or reduced later?
Thank you, Mr. Chick. I appreciate I'm taxing you with two things at once, so I know you're ably assisted by Ms. Wilkinson.
Yes, I'll look at the other question in a moment, but in terms of nitrates, we have an updated nitrates calculator. So applicants have to fill in a nitrate calculator for housing development. A new one has been submitted simply because the development size has reduced from 16 houses to 10. That's been provided. It's filled out in the normal way. It's used the Natural England calculator. I've checked it several times. It's got the normal figures in that we'd expect in terms of occupancy levels, water usage, based on the amount of houses that are there. What the calculator does is spit out the amount of nitrogen load a development results in. That then tells you what mitigation is required. So in this case, the drainage system has I think it's 88.5% efficiency rating. It's a Natural England approved drainage system. So the remaining percentage needs to be mitigated effectively. So what the applicant is saying is they will mitigate through a mixture of on-site mitigation, and then what can't be mitigated on site is mitigated through credits, and they would need to purchase those credits from a nitrate mitigation site in the catchment for this area. The likelihood is it will be a nitrate site at, can't remember the name of the site, but it's on the Western Yard. Quite a large habitat bank there that sells credits. Kings Manor Farm, yes. So, but basically through the legal agreement, the requirement for those credits will be set in that. Those credits would need to be agreed prior to development commencing. Obviously, if the applicant couldn't gain those credits, they would have to vary the application, but obviously that's looking in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chick. I'll turn to, if I may, Councillor Fuller, and then we'll come back, because I appreciate Mr. Chick is going to answer that. Is that okay? Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I'm sort of like juggling several balls at the moment.
one of the issues that I have is on page 37 and the impact on the character of the area. Looking at the outline development that we have, I can't see anything that actually will enhance the quality of the area. What I'm really looking for from the applicant is something that will say, wow, this is something that makes the area more attractive. I understand that the location itself is not within the natural landscapes. It's on that swathe of land that lies between the what used to be the AONB. So it is perhaps not a special area of landscape value. However, looking at this will have an impact upon the countryside, and I wonder what mitigation you would suggest could go in place to make sure that this does not detract from the natural landscape which a location is very much part of.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fuller. Mr. Chick, you were able to speak to that and any potential additional conditioning that we are able to place on this?
Sorry, Councillor Fuller, you'll need to repeat that question because I was looking at the answers to an earlier
That's
question.
a failure on my part, really. I should have managed it a little better given how many questions you're having to deal with. So apologies, Councillor Fuller. Would you mind repeating the substance of that?
What I'm looking at is policy SP5, and I will quote what policy SP5 suggests, and that is that development should at least conserve or enhance the island's natural landscape. Now, what my question to you is, how does this development do either conserve or enhance the natural landscape?
Thank you.
And then I have a second question as well while I've got the microphone. I know
please do.
Councillor Cameron wants to come in as well. But again, one of the other issues as well is that the NPPF is very, very strong about allowing development in sustainable locations, because there is a lack of facilities in this area. How can officers justify that this is a sustainable location as compared to somewhere within a village or a town centre location?
Thank you very much, Councillor Fuller. Mr. Chick.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, our views on sustainability are set out within the report, and they recognise that this site isn't wholly sustainable, but the council's subject to the presumption in favour of sustainable development, and that means that the council needs to cast its net further in terms of finding houses. And I think the committee's debated this issue many times over the last 3 or 4 years. So ultimately, our view on that issue is set out. Committee can have a different opinion. Committee can say the middle of Wellow is not suitable for 10 houses, it's not sustainable. People will just get in their cars and that's all they'll do. That's not the view of officers, but committee can take a different point of view, and our recommendation is only that, it's not binding on you. In terms of conserving and enhancing the area, obviously it is an outline application. Officers' view is that housing development wouldn't cause harm sufficient to refuse the planning application. I think it's probably true to say that very few people would stand in front of an open field and say putting housing on it would improve it. But in real life, housing is needed. And it's about working out the locations for housing that would cause the least amount of harm. And in this case, officers recognise the fact that Wellow has a built-up frontage, and this site will be adjacent to existing 2-storey housing, and it will be seen in the backdrop of that. It's not a particularly visible site from the wider area, and the officer report sets out our views for that, but obviously the committee can come to a different conclusion if it so wishes.
Thank you very much. If I may chip in very quickly, Mr. Chick, in terms of the visual impacts assessments, that was not needed is that essentially a qualitative judgment by officers, or is there essentially a criteria surrounding when that is triggered as to being required?
Yes, I think I covered this in the report at the back, but LVIAs are generally needed for larger planning applications that result in more complex impacts. And because of that, it's considered that the application wouldn't be able to be considered without an LVIA, which set out the impact of a development from a range of agreed viewpoints. And then you assess in a slightly different way what the level of change and therefore the level of harm may be. In this case, officers consider this is a relatively discrete site, fairly small. The level of housing is 10, so it's not going to have that kind of complex level of impact that requires an elevated level of assessment.
Thank you very much. Are you able to speak to Councillor Cameron's earlier point regarding the Environment Agency? Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Natural England, isn't it? Yeah, so from officers' point of view, the information that Natural England are referring to is the standard information we'd expect for a proposed development that was using an on-site treatment plant. But Natural England have confirmed to us that that in situations where the planning authority is satisfied that the impacts can be assessed through basically the guidance within nitrates position statement, i.e. either the wastewater from the site is draining to a wastewater treatment plant that doesn't discharge into the SPA, or there is mitigation in place, such as a treatment plant, and then the mitigation needed in terms of nitrates is then assessed through the Natural England calculator. Then Natural England don't need to be consulted on the HRA. So I've probably said that in a very roundabout way, and not very concisely, but ultimately what they've written to us and said is, if you're satisfied that the approach to mitigating the impact of nitrates, so wastewater, is in accordance with our position statement, and therefore standard mitigation such as an on-site treatment plant and then nitrates credits or mitigation, then Natural England need not be consulted on the HRA that the planning authority undertakes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cameron.
Natural England asked for the reports to be given to them. And so I'm not happy that the fact that they haven't been given the reports. Why haven't they been given the reports if that's what they requested?
Chick.
Because I think the advice that they gave in 2023 was made at a time when they hadn't issued the advice to us to say, you don't need to consult us on the HRA when the mitigation is of a certain type. So, I mean, at that point, the issue of nitrates wasn't new, but we were still going through the early stages of understanding what nitrates was, how it would be mitigated. It's now a well-established process. And basically, Natural England have come to us and said, look, if a development is below a certain level and the mitigation that you're securing is pretty standard, then we can rely on the local authorities' assessment, and you don't need to come to us because it's not particularly complex. And basically, it's Natural England saying that we trust your approach, and therefore, if it's not a huge development, then you can assess it yourselves.
Thank you very much. I will come back to you, Councillor Cameron. I'm just keen to allow everyone to have a bite of the cherry on an equal basis. And Councillor Ward has been waiting very patiently. So, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to pick up on something that Councillor Price raised, actually, about the affordable housing and whether it would be rentable. Could I ask, would there be any restriction on a housing association to buy those affordable houses if they wish to?
Thank you. Mr. Chick, are you able to speak to that?
Yes, I mean, ultimately, if the housing association is a registered provider of affordable homes, then they could either purchase or they could, they could purchase and then rent
out
those properties to people on the housing register or people in housing need.
It's total freedom, actually.
But supplementary, Councillor Ward? No. Councillor Fuller, yes.
Which brings me to the next question. Affordable housing, social housing, really, really important. where is the nearest affordable or social housing in Wellow? First of all, where is the nearest social housing to this site? And secondly, where is the nearest affordable housing to this site? Because I think when you go out to the West White, affordable and social housing is something that doesn't come to you straight away. I know that there are sites in Shalfleet. I know that there are sites in Boldner, but I just wanted to know where there is on this within these this middle road, or it's not the middle road, the Wellow Road corridor, because I'm not really aware of any social or affordable housing other than Lee Farm.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fuller. Mr. Chick.
Yep, so that there are some existing and long-standing social housing units in Thorley, not too far from here. So I can't remember the housing provider who manages them, but I think they still manage those properties. But I think you're right, in terms of where is the nearest affordable housing, it's at the site at Shalfleet that was built some years ago that addressed specific affordable housing and social housing issues in Shalfleet Parish.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Fuller? No. Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Okay, going back to the nitrate calculator, outline does not defer habitat regulation compliance. If the credit site and the units are not identified, and you've identified Kings Manor Farm, that's not in the area. So what basis can we lawfully conclude no adverse effect on integrity today?
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Mr. Chick.
So the Thorley Brook drains into the Western Yard, and Kings Manor Farm is on the Western Yard. So it is in the right catchment, but from our point of view, it would be in the right catchment to provide credits for this site.
Thank you. Supplementary, Mr. Cameron.
I believe that's too far away, Kings Manor Farm, from actually Thorley.
That may be
Actually, proximity isn't the issue. Natural England's advice is very clear that nitrates credits have to be purchased in the relevant catchment for the SPA area that is affected. For sites on the mainland, the catchment is much wider. It just has to be somewhere in the Solent catchment. On the island, it's more specific because all of the rivers that flow into the SPA are SSIs. So Natural England have taken an approach that catchment on the Isle of Wight should be more specific to the river catchments affected that then drain into the SPA. The river catchment that drains into the SPA here is the